Okay, so to be able to sustain an ecosystem needs energy. Okay, and this energy, you all know, ultimately comes from light energy. And by the way, there are some ecosystems that do not have access to sunlight, so they have a different metabolism. Their source of energy might be chemicals, and these are microscopic organisms, especially deep down in ocean vents. But let's talk about ecosystems in general. So ecosystems will need that initial source of energy from the sunlight, and there are three autotrophs that uses this light energy and converts it into a useful form for the other organisms in the ecosystem. So our three groups we're looking at are plants, algae, and cyanobacteria. So these three groups of organism has the ability to undergo a process called photosynthesis, which you all know converts light energy into chemical energy. This chemical energy is in the form of carbon-based compounds or molecules, such as carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Now, these carbon-based compounds are the source of chemical energy for the organism. So think about yourself. What do we use these molecules for? We basically eat food so that we can metabolize it and in the process form ATP. Now, this molecule is a molecule that we can use to give us energy. So if we hydrolyze ATP, it gives a large amount of energy. That's why we can move our fingers. We can move substances in and out of the membrane, or substances moving inside the cell will be able to move because of this ATP. However, if the organism uses the carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids to get energy, the whole process of metabolizing these carbon-based compounds releases heat. This abides with the second law of thermodynamics, which states that transformation of energy is not always 100% efficient. So transforming energy through this process, so let's say chemical energy into a usable form, it's not always converted into a usable form of energy. Some of it are wasted, and in this case, it is in the form of heat. This process of losing heat is not all that bad because this whole mechanism can actually provide warmth for organisms. So our metabolism, which produces heat, is actually useful for the body to keep us warm. However, the point is, when organisms metabolize their food, organisms loses heat. Now, where does this take us? If the food consumed by organisms are eventually converted into heat, from one organism eating another organism eating another organism, we're losing some of that energy from organism to the next. So there would be less energy for the next organism. This will lead us to the concept of the food, This leads us to the concept of pyramids of energy. You might be familiar with an image here that represents pyramid of energy, but let me just tell you, this is an inaccurate representation of pyramids of energy. You might have seen this before. We represented with a pyramid, so the triangle. become smaller and smaller as you go up each trophic level, from producers to your primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. Now this is a more accurate representation of your pyramids of energy. So what you notice here is it's not a triangle, it's not a pyramid, and as you go down from your producer to the primary consumer, secondary, tertiary consumer, we are losing a large amount of energy. And this is because, again, from this organism to this organism to this organism, each of these consumers, when they consume their food, they also metabolize it, and they release heat to their environment as a byproduct of the metabolism of the different molecules. Some magic numbers here that you need to remember is 90% and 10%, which means that only 10% of the energy is passed on to the next organism in the trophic level. So 90% can be lost as heat, number one, or when the organism eats another organism, it's not really fully consuming everything, so it's not passing on the energy. And that organism, when it digests the food, some components of the food are not digestible. So the 90% are lost here. So what does that mean? Only 10% is passed on from one trophic level to another trophic level. Conclusion here. Ecosystems can be sustainable because we have a constant supply and source of energy. This energy can be transformed, made available for organisms. However, because from one organism to the next, we're losing that energy, our energy of pyramid will limit your trophic levels between 3 to 5. The reason is, if you have another consumer that will prey upon that 5th trophic level, there would not be enough energy for that next organism to be able to get all its energy needs. So this is 4.2, energy flow in the ecosystem.